For me, this is not an easy decision. There have been comments in the media and to some extent testimony before us that this organization at the staff level and the board members have not adequately reviewed or considered all the issues that are before us. Like my colleague Director Brown, I can't think of a project other than maybe Broadway that I have spent more time thinking about. I've read, I think, every piece of paper that's been presented to us, most of them more than once, trying to understand the variety of issues and allocations. And I've gone through them each individually and tried to resolve them, and there are a couple areas where I remain confused. But perhaps it's worth, just for the record, to comment to the extent to which at least this board member, and I think the whole of the board, has considered that which is in front of us. I understand the issue, the tentative map issue, the condo conversion, and the noticing flaw, which is not insignificant. But from my perspective, you know, the Planning Commission acted, the city acted. It is a legal lot today, and as I indicated in my question remarks, it could have been created as a legal lot through more of a ministerial lot line process, where noticing would not have been quite the issue to the same extent. I understand also the history of the Mills Act, and I understand also that this organization never consented to it and objected to the Mills Act designation as soon as it was known. I've heard ample testimony on the question of disclosure and in the whole conversation about contractual obligations. And as our chairman has asked repeatedly for over a year, you know, for a written, tangible representation in the CC&Rs or some other sales document, advertising document that made a statement contrary to what the CC&Rs clearly said about 2025 and the use of the property. There was not a commitment that the property could not be used before 2025, other than in the agreement with this organization. I understand there are civil actions going on relative to the property on construction defects and homeowners association issues, and those are out of our hands, and they should be out of our hands. If we were barred from acting on any project that was involved in litigation, I wouldn't be giving up a couple afternoons every month because we wouldn't be acting on anything. I understand the lawsuit on the AARP relative to the rights and obligations, but as my colleague and counsel has indicated, this organization has two opinions that have advised us that it is within our authority to act under the AARP to modify it. And you know, the litigation is concerned to go forward. We have the advice from our counsel. I am very wary about creating a precedent of not acting on something before this organization because there's pending litigation. We would only encourage litigation and effectively encourage people to freeze the actions of government to file litigation on anything, with or without merit. I'm not suggesting that litigation at hand is without merit, but litigation happens. It cannot be a reason for us to be frozen. On the positive side of this project, it is consistent with the Center City Development Plan, which is no small matter. I mean, that is the guiding document, that is the constitution by which this organization determines what land uses are appropriate. It is consistent with the PDO, the 2006. I would have had serious heartburn had the applicant not made the decision to comply with the most recent PDO. It's gone through HRB and was favorably reviewed on a 5-to-1 vote. Went through CCAC, favorably reviewed on a 19-to-1 vote. Our retained design consultant is generally favorable with some minor comments regarding ground floor. The last area that has from the beginning given me the greatest concern about this is the agreement affecting real property and the restriction until 2025. Trying to understand what was the basis of that bargain, what was the intent of the parties when that contract was entered into, because as staff has indicated, we are being asked to agree to allow the developer to use that parcel prior to the term identified in that contract. And there are two ways of interpreting that contract. Is one, we inserted that language, and I wasn't part of this board at that time. Not that I would have noticed it had I been here when it went through, but one, we could have inserted that language because we thought there was a compelling public interest to maintain control of that property until 2025, just because that's the duration of our plan. Or it could have been the intent to include that language in there because we wanted to protect the restoration of the project, which we were committed to, and to secure our loan, which obviously was in our self-interest. The project has been restored, the loan has been repaid, so if it's that second interpretation, the rationale in support of putting that language in the AARP no longer exists. The public interest that was being protected by that language no longer exists, and it seems reasonable to conclude that it's appropriate to allow the property to be used consistent with the community plan. But that issue of all the issues gives me the most trouble, because what I see our job as doing is balancing the public interest versus the private interest. But for the AARP, I would have no problem approving this project. With that, and the uncertainty as to the appropriate interpretation, it does give me some pause. The second area which sort of compounds the pause is the design is compromised because of the history of the project. I don't think it's the fault of the applicant. I think it's because of the history of the project, the history of the historic review, and the process we put them through. And it's not my personal preference for designs. The problem I constantly have on this board is what is the public interest relative to design versus my personal aesthetic opinion relative to design. So those are the two issues that give me the greatest concern: design and with the proper interpretation of the AARP. Director Ozar.